We have come to the final session. And in this session, I would like to address the question we had asked earlier. And the question was, we had seen Jesus to be the most blameless, the most innocent. We also saw that he died the most horrible death. The question was, why should the most innocent die the most horrible death? Did cosmic ultimate justice go bad? You know, if you address this question, you'll come to the core of the Christian message. And I've entitled it a transaction because it is a transaction. But before we get into the description of the transaction, I would like to first give you a definition, my own definition of a few words that I will use. They're not fixed or rigid, but that's the way I will use these words. And so let's look at some of these words. Number one, justice. Justice requires 3 R's. Rule, which is the law. Reward, if you keep to the rule and the law. And retribution or punishment, if you break the law. All 3 R's are set and changeless. And in the whole judicial systems of the world, the punishment is equal to the crime by its very nature of being just. People say eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth is really just a revengeful idea, but really it is not. An eye for a toenail and life for a tooth would be complete injustice. And therefore it has to be equal, eye for an eye. If you took $100, returning 50 won't be justice. All 100 must go back there. In other words, the 3 R's, the rule, the reward, and the retribution or punishment are set. Nobody can change that. But if we live only by justice, there are very few relationships that can carry on. Very few of us can ever claim that we were given all the rewards we were due and we were punished for all the things we did wrong. No. There's something else that comes into our existence, and in the ultimate sense, it has to be there. It is called mercy. But mercy cannot change the law, the reward, or the punishment. In fact, justice is satisfied in punishing once the axe falls. Mercy cannot stop the axe from falling. All it can do is maybe shift the axe and let it fall here. If justice as a cannon will fire, mercy cannot stop the firing. All it can do is shift the cannon to fire here. In other words, if mercy allows the punishment to be reduced even an iota, that would be changing the law. If the law can be changed, we will have no need for mercy. All we will need is to change the law whenever needed. the change would then be completely arbitrary, and we would have neither justice nor mercy in their ultimate sense. Justice remains justice, and mercy retains its feature only if justice is inflexible, it is changeless. All three R's, changeless. Righteousness, another big word. Righteousness means doing it right. So what makes anything right? You can do some things that are right with a wrong motive. Will that make it right? No, it does not. So what really makes anything done right, correct, good? I'm suggesting a simple rock bottom definition. 4 words. Righteousness or goodness is you first, not me. Everything that we do, whenever we are in a circumstance which requires a decision to be made, then I will always place you first, not me. And anything that emanates and comes out from that is righteousness, because that is a basic principle. It is simple, but in a little while you will see that it runs very deep. Righteousness will run deep. And I want you to remember that as we go through this description. Righteousness, doing it right, also has another idea, and that is love. Now, love is not an easy concept to just remember and accept and also describe, because we have only one word in the English language. But if we take the help of Greek and Latin, we might be able to get an idea of what is this thing called love. The Greeks have, for example, eros, erotic love. In this love, you need physical attraction. You need to be attracted to an individual. And once you have that, then sensual parts of the love come into play, intimacies, and it's not bad. It is something that was placed there in our existence, but that is erotic love. 2, filial love, phileo, again a Greek word, family, love between members of a family. Here it is a supportive type of love, a love that enjoys being together. It is platonic, no intimacy is there, but it's very strong. That is filial love. The Latin word sturge refers to love between friends. And here the main point is loyalty. You will stand by them no matter what. Sturge. The second Latin word is caritas, from where we get the word charity. Charity is in a position where somebody needs help, and we are more than willing to help. This is that type of love. We'll give you all the help you need because we love you. The 5th word, which completes this list, is agape. Agape is a Greek word, and is different from these 4 in more than one way. And one of the ways is that agape is divine love. It is a love that is self-sacrificing and thinks only of the other. And that's why we equate that with righteousness. You first, not me. Every one of the first 4 requires an incentive, a reason. Agape is the only love that does not require any incentive. It has no reason. It is a reasonless expression. Listen, if something has no reason to exist, and it exists, then it can never find a reason to leave. I'll say it again. If something has no reason to exist, and it does exist, then it can never find a reason to leave. And that is why agape is eternal. It will never be able to find a reason to leave. Eros, when the reason, which is physical attraction, is gone, then eros is gone. When the family situation is broken down and you're gone away from your family, then there's no more filio. If you break away your friendship, then there's no more sturge. If there's nobody to help, then there's no more caritas. In other words, the first four, when the reason leaves, the love leaves. Agape is the only love that can never leave because it has no reason to leave. It has no reason to be in existence and therefore has no reason to leave. You first, not me, is righteousness and agape. So the opposite, unrighteousness, sin, badness. It's me first and not you. From there comes all the badness that we see on this earth. That's my definition of these words. How about the word heaven? I mean, the descriptions in all these religious writings is very impressive. I mean, you read them, you think, hey, I better go there. It's so beautiful. Gold and pearls and lots of food and running water and lights and joys and pleasures. Beautiful. You know, one of the descriptions is that it's made of gold and precious stones. I used to wonder why. Why gold? You know, when I thought about it, and I'd like you also to think about it, the reason why gold and precious stones is described as heaven is because we have a warped sense of values. We think things are important and valuable. But do you know, if you look into your life and mine, the greatest treasure is not a box of diamonds. The greatest treasure is a heart-to-heart, loving, harmonious relationship. Just ask lovers. Try to go to them and say, hey, can I have your partner? I've got a diamond here. We'll have a fair exchange. No, don't try it. You'll get a whack. No. Because the relationship is more precious than anything else. Yes, there may be gold in heaven, my friends, but really, heaven is not that gold or pearls. Heaven is because there is the most desirable person over there, God, who is agape love. That is what makes it heaven, the relationship. Therefore, if two humans get to be good friends and have a harmonious relationship, then that is heaven on earth. If a human and God get into that relationship, everything is clean, clear, wonderful, harmonious, then that is going to be heaven. And if this relationship is between personalities of the Godhead, then it is even better than heaven. Because it's from there that we got heaven. So the source, better. How about hell? We often think of hell as, burning sulfur and fire. Yes, but consider that fire can burn your skin and you really can have pain. But the pain of a broken relationship will go far deeper than your skin. It will go to your heart. So hell may have fire, but hell as a description is not really the fire. It is a completely shattered, unrepairable relationship that now you are faced with. Gone. That is hell. When two people get to be enemies and have hostility and anger and hate each other, that is hell on earth. And when God and a human reach that place where they don't want anything to do with the other, the human says, I don't care, I don't want it, I want to go my own way, I hate you, God, and that is going to be hell. Yes, there will be fire, but this is the hell, the broken relationship that results in the fire. And if ever it comes to be that one personality of the Godhead is forced to move away from the other, then it will be worse than hell. So heaven is a place of God's immediate presence. And we define hell as a God-forsaken, God-abandoned place. Now heaven was what we described as this, and hell as the exact opposite. What about death? The Bible describes death in two ways. One, it calls the first death. That's a consequence of the principle of sin, which is everywhere on earth. So everybody dies. Whether you're good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. Die. It's temporary. There is supposed to be a resurrection from that. And when that is over, then we are faced with either eternal life or eternal death, which is the second death. The second death is not a consequence of sin. It is the punishment for sin. Everybody dies the first death. The second death, only those who have made a settled decision to move away in their own direction, away from the source of life that is God. Then second death takes place. It is a punishment, eternal, irreversible. The book of Hebrews describes a suffering of death. And also in chapter 2 and verse 9, that's what we are referring to, it says there's a tasting of death. Strange words, aren't they? Think about it. How do you suffer death? When you die, everything is gone, finished. How can you taste death? The only way you can really reason out this is if we agreed that suffering and tasting of this death is while you are still alive. You cannot taste once you are dead. So the suffering of death and the tasting of death is when you are alive, when you are facing with a sense of impending permanent doom, that this relationship is shattered, irreparable. That is the suffering of death. The story begins after the Passover meal that Jesus had with his disciples. He rises up and walks out of that room and moves towards the Garden of Gethsemane. Disciples notice that something is different in Jesus. He has usually been very outgoing and pleasant, discussing things and explaining things, but this evening he is absolutely silent. He appears to be struggling. There is on his face a deep concern, and the disciples are wondering what is happening. They walk towards the garden, and when they come to the gate, Jesus turns to 9 of them and says, "You wait here at the gate. I will go in with my 3 close disciples, Peter, James, and John." He goes in a few yards, a little distance, and then he turns to these 3 and he says, "You also wait here. I have to go alone." And as he walks, he is staggering. And in a few yards, he just falls flat to the ground. And his lips are moving. And if you could hear, these are the words he is saying. "Oh, my Father, is there any way you can stop my suffering? I am not able to bear it any longer. Please, Abba, Father, is there no other way? This is too hard. It is too painful for me." What's happening here? Didn't we think that he was quite a hero? A big guy who could face anything in life? He could turn to any condition and be the master over there. He could look at the demons and command them. He could look at a corpse, a dead body, and say, "Rise up," and the body would rise. What is happening here? Lost all fortitude and courage and faith? Running from known duty? It's a question. Consider some others. compare him with, say, that intrepid Bohemian reformer called Jerome. You know, when Jerome was tied to the stake, they put the pile of woods around him, and the custom was that the person would come with a fire and light it behind the individual. When the person came with a flame, Jerome called out to him and said, "Wait a minute, come here before me and light the fire before my face. If I was afraid, I wouldn't have been here at all." And think of the maidens and the children in the Colosseums of first century Rome, where they were thrown to the wild animals in the arenas there. They would hold hands, form a circle. They knew in a few minutes they could hear the gates rattling. And when the gates would open, these ravenous beasts would just charge across the arena, pounce on them, tear them to pieces, and all in a few minutes you would hear was munching of bones. They are gone, dead. But what were they doing, holding hands? Amazingly, the children and maidens would be singing songs unto him who saved us. Be praise and honor. Why was Jesus not singing? Why was he whimpering like this? You know, nearly everyone points to the descriptions of physical suffering and claims that that is the crux of the story. But if that were the case, then we would have to confess that Pilate, the Roman soldiers, and the Jewish priests, along with Satan, cooperated with God to buy our salvation. The fact is, only God was working out our salvation. Satan and his cohorts were certainly not. The cross, the nails, the thorns, and the spear did not procure anyone's salvation. Oh, wow. If that's the case, then that's all I've known so far. Look at the thorns, look at the cross, look at the spear. That's all I have been talking about all this while. The truth is, none of that ever bought our salvation. So we ask, then what did? For that, we go back, way back in history. Because it says in Revelation 13 and verse 8, Jesus is described there as the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Most people think of the relationship between God and humans in terms of promises called covenants. They say there's the first covenant and the second covenant, also called the Abrahamic covenant and the Sinai covenant, the old covenant and the new covenant. These are relationships or promises, covenants, contracts between God and humans. But when the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world, there were no humans. Something had to have taken place then. I call it the primary covenant, the core covenant. And this is the covenant that really saves us. It uses the first and second and the old and the new to help save, but the real covenant that saves is the primary covenant. And here's how I envision it. These three personalities of the Godhead got together and said, we will take the full responsibility for creating humans. If anything untoward happens, we will pay the price to bring them back, that means to redeem them, at any cost to ourselves. No human was there to make a covenant. They made it among themselves. And this is what I call the primary covenant, the covenant that actually really saves. In that covenant, one of them had to come down and become a human. Jesus volunteered. In coming down to a human, it was a tricky situation. He was God. Would he stop being God? Well, if he did not, then his incarnation would be a sham. If he did not become truly human. And if he did become truly human and live on the morality and the piety of a human, failure would be all but guaranteed. So, How did they do it? And here's the genius of the plan. Jesus, as God, could not stop being God. But he could do one thing: lay aside the prerogatives of divinity, lay aside the rights and the powers of his divine life, and put it aside and become a human. But if he took on human nature, then he might fall. So in the incarnation, he would take up the human nature, but he would not live by the human nature. He would deny it moment by moment. In other words, he would lay aside his rights to divinity. He would also not live by the clamors of human nature which would have made him fall. He would live by the strength, wisdom, and morality supplied by his Father from moment to moment, and he would deny the human nature that he was born with moment to moment. That is how he would live. I used to wonder what he did for hours of prayer, because the description is that he would spend hours, long periods of time. In fact, some of the descriptions is that he spent the whole night in prayer. What was he doing? I haven't seen people pray for that long. I used to wonder, because I'm over with my prayer in just a few minutes. And then I let my imagination go, and I think it was not just a prayer of, hi, hello, can I have this? No. It was actually part of that prayer and relationship was chalking out the next day. For example, he was talking to his dad, and his dad would say, his father, God, son, tomorrow the priests and the rulers are going to come to you, and they will talk with words and expressions that are so conniving and so devious, you will get mad. But if you get angry, you will lose the battle. As a human, you will react that way. And when you happen to come to that point, do not let it go. Do not get mad or angry. Just turn to me. I will provide you the calmness and the peace that you require at that time. They will ask you some tricky questions, trying to trap you. And at that moment, you will not know what to say. You're a human being. How will you answer them wisely? Turn to me. I will provide you the wisdom. I will provide you the words at that particular time. Trust in me. If I tell you right now, you might forget by tomorrow because you're a human. So I will give it to you at that time. Sometimes you will meet people who really need help, and you will overflow with compassion. You would wish to help them. Similarly, there will be some times when people will challenge you and you will have to perform a miracle. But as a human, you don't have faith. You don't have the power. At the point when you're supposed to perform that miracle, turn to me. I will supply you the faith and the power to perform that miracle. I will be with you every moment. I will never leave you or forsake you. And in turn, God the Father was his rock-like, unfailing source of everything he needed. Nobody could trip him up or make him fall. Nobody could make him angry or hateful or sinful. He was kept by the power of the Father from moment to moment, even physically protected. People tried. Herod did when he was a young child. He wanted to wipe him off. He couldn't. John, the 7th chapter and the 30th verse, and John 8 and 20 says that the people wanted to get him, but they could not. The words there are, because his hour had not come. God was protecting him. Nobody could touch him. He was safe. That is why he said, with this idea, I can of myself do nothing. The Father who sent me, He gave me commandment what I should say and what I should speak. I am totally, completely dependent on the wisdom and the words and the permission of my Father. In other words, every teaching that he gave, every parable that he described, every miracle that he performed was by the express permission and power of his Father. Until that evening, there was a paradigm shift. This is your hour and the power of darkness. Those were his words. For this purpose I came to this hour. And he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. My soul, he said, is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. And his sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. What is happening? There was a clear-cut shift from one state to another. He who was the Lion of the tribe of Judah earlier was now taking on the role of the Lamb of God. No more a lion, now a lamb. Where do we get this picture of a lamb? From the Jewish sacrificial system. And in that system, the first requirement of a lamb was that it become the bearer of sin. The person who brings the lamb puts his hand on the lamb and says, now the lamb is a sinner because I have transferred my sin onto the lamb. He goes scot-free. The lamb is now the sinner and has to pay for it, and so they slit the throat of the lamb. The lamb becomes a sin bearer. And so on this man, who had never known sin, he had never experienced in his life even a moment of going against his Father, was laid the whole weight of sin. Every sin, from Adam to the last person who would ever live, placed on him. Some people say, well, or they think that it might have been a big, heavy load, maybe on his head or shoulders or in his hand, or maybe a cloak wrapped around him. That was the sin that he took on. Really, the record is shocking. The full and complete principle of sin was rolled onto him in one life-choking heap. How? Not by something placed on him. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, He, God, made him to be sin. Not just to hold sin or deal with sin, but to become sin. In other words, in one sense, at that point when he became all sin, the entire universe was clean except for that center cross. For it was time for God the Father and the whole Godhead to deal decisively with sin, and it was found only on that center cross. Only the author of a law has the authority to punish. That is why God was dealing, not Satan, not the Jewish priest, not Pilate. The record says he was stricken, smitten of God. All we like sheep have gone astray, but the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was delivered, it says in Romans 4:25, he was delivered up for our offenses. Delivered up to whom? To what? To Pilate? To the Roman soldiers? To the Jewish priests and rulers? No. He was delivered up to the full and final punishment of sin. For God and full-blown rebellion cannot coexist at the judicial level. He must punish to the full extent of the law, separate himself, and send that evildoer to the place and experience called death, the second death, also hell. That was the only way God could deal with sin. Deal with it, punish, separate. The separation began that evening in the garden. And how Jesus' soul loathed it. He had been one with God throughout eternity. all the time, even on this earth, every moment one with his Father. And as the separation took place, he cried out from the depths, "Please do not do this, my Father. Is there no other way?" 3 times he asked that same prayer, "Please, not this way. Is there any other way?" And the answer was, "There is not." Finally, he said, "All right. If this is the only way, your will is mine." This pictures the fundamental difference between Jesus and every other martyr on earth. You remember we said the martyrs can sing? You know, every other martyr had God by their sides, sustaining, supporting, comforting, strengthening, pointing out to the hope that is in the future. Don't worry. There is a greater hope. Hang in there with your martyrdom. I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. That is how the martyrs had the strength to face death so calmly. But when the lifeline to God himself is breaking up, no one can sing, my friends, not even the Son of God, for the source of the song has gone. Sometime in the garden, the Father fell silent. Abba, silence. Father, Dad, Abba, are you there? Silence. Abba, you promised and told me I would rise up the 3rd day. Will I rise up the 3rd day? Silence. Abba, on your word, I told everybody, I told the whole world, I was bold in what I said. I would rise up the 3rd day. Please now give me one word of assurance that it will happen. Please, Abba, do not leave me now. Do not abandon me. Speak to me. Just one word, it'll be enough. I will go through it. Just tell me that you are with me. Silence. And then it dawned on him, the thought came crashing into his mind, that this is the punishment of a righteous God against sin, abandonment. This is the judgment to which there can be no repeal. This is a street marked no return. And from those pale, parched, quivering lips came the bitterest cry this universe will ever hear. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now when I need you the most, where are you? Do not forsake me, my God. This is the cry of the heart when the abandonment has been complete and utter. This is the cry when the cannon of justice points and there is no mercy to change that direction of that cannon. This is the cry of the soul that is sinking into hell itself. No cross or nails, no spear or thorn can match this type of soul agony. God being ripped apart from God. This was worse than hell. His heart muscle tore apart and he died, not from crucifixion, but of a broken heart, unable to bear the suffering of a fractured relationship with his Father. The priests and rulers were there. They came by, saw him hanging on the cross, and looked up to him and said, "Hey, how does it feel up there? Feel like the Son of God? Let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. You come down and we will believe that you are the Son of God." How often have we asked for miracles? That's what they were asking for, a miracle. And then we will believe. They did not know that he was hanging there because he was the Son of God. If he were to come down, he would have to deny the very fabric of his character and show that he was not the Son of God. How often do we ask for miracles when we are faced with a miracle itself. For here they were asking for a miracle, and right before their eyes was the greatest miracle of all. Which is greater, to come down when you can, or to just stay there voluntarily, in agony, pain, and despair, out of sheer love for these very ones who were taunting him? That was the miracle, and they missed it all. Who was he dying for anyway? His own nation had gone to an enemy and said, "You join with us to put him to death." Everyone in his community had rejected him. His disciples had fled. One of his own disciples went to the priests and rulers and said, "I will tell you who he is, and I will take you to him so you can arrest him." And one of his own inner disciples denied knowing him at all, cursing and swearing, "I don't know the man." Who was he dying for? Think how dark the prospect of dying for nothing at all. The cross at its core was a single piercing choice. Save yourself or save this world of blundering wretches. Was there a choice? On one hand, the majesty of heaven, the commander of the whole heavenly host. Angels would bow and worship at his feet. And on the other side, you and me, horrible, hateful, corrupt, boastful, crude, cruel. Was there a choice? Think. Love has no reason. If you were to give a reason for the choice, you would not find it at all. It was agape love that came out in its final and best scene at this juncture. What made him turn to this decision? I really don't know. But sometimes I do guess that maybe at that particular point of making a decision, he looked down the ages and saw me. He saw my face. He saw yours. Weak, woeful, blundering, bruised and battered in life. Hopelessly, helplessly, sliding down the slippery slope straight to perdition and to hell. And he said, "No, I don't want to let them go." He was suffering hell himself, and he did not want that for me and you. Not for them. And in one of the most brilliant demonstrations of righteousness that will ever be seen. Remember, righteousness is you first, not me. He turned to you and me and said, "You first, not me." If that is a choice, Abba, Father, take them. Give them a chance for heaven. I am gone forever. The deep and wondrous compassion that he felt for me was so broad that he forgot about himself. I am gone. And somewhere along the hours as he hung on the cross, the Father cut himself off from the Son in a consummate act of justice. And with the cutting off went the hope of resurrection. He died with you and me on his mind, not himself. What wondrous love is this, O my soul? O my soul, what wondrous love is this? In this is love, not that we loved him, but that he loved us first. If this is true, if this is what really happened, then think. You will never find an equal or a parallel in the entire history of this world at any given time. But come, the third day, he rose up. How? Why? Wasn't it a permanent decision he made? Yes, it is, and it was. But consider this. If you take a little pebble and throw it onto a rat, what would happen? Nothing. People wouldn't say anything. But if you take that same pebble and just do the same action of throwing it, but this time onto the President of the United States, now what will happen? Why the difference? The difference is not in the pebble. The difference is not even in the act. The difference is in the place of the person or the entities that are in relationship to us. Way down there, doesn't matter. Way up there, it does matter a great deal. What am I saying? Jesus was God. He belonged to the realm of infinity. Any insult, even a small insult to him, would translate into infinite insult. Even a small bit of suffering to him would translate to infinite suffering. And this was not small, it was horrendous. Horrendous, infinite suffering. Enough to pay for every finite sin on the face of this earth that anyone could possibly have committed. That is why it says in Isaiah 53:11, He, God the Father, shall see the travail, the superhuman agony of His, Jesus' soul, and shall be satisfied that justice was done. Now consider this. He had tasted death, he had suffered the death while he was still alive for every human on earth. But he had suffered not because of his own sin, but for ours. Therefore, he himself had never sinned. And so it would not go against justice to raise him up from the dead, because he himself had not sinned. He that lives according to the rules shall live. And he did live according to the rules. He died or tasted the death for us. When he came up by the permission of his Father, he came up from the tomb with his own life, original, unborrowed, underived, but with an eternal difference. And what was the difference? He could have it back, but not become the sole possessor. He would have to share it with who he had sacrificed it for. And that's why it says in Romans 8:29, he would be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. Before the cross, he was the only Son of God. After the cross, the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. Who are they? You, me. Exalted privilege. Listen to what it says in Hebrews, the 2nd chapter, and verse 11. For both he who sanctifies, God, Jesus, the personalities of Godhead, and those who are sanctified, you and me, are all of one. One stock, one race, one family, one blood. For which reason he is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. He is not ashamed, my friends, to call you and me brothers and sisters. Think again. Who should be ashamed of whom? And who is ashamed of whom? Like a perfect gentleman, he stands at the door, described in Revelation 3:20. And he knocks at the door. He does not barge in. He does not coerce. He does not force himself in. He stands at the door and knocks because he wants us to open the door. If you open, he says, I will come in. And we, when we hear him knocking, hey, you again, like an irritating salesperson, go on to the next door. Go on. You've said that before. I told you already. Listen, I need to find out whether it's worth my time and effort to come and open the door for you. what has sin done to us? But look at how he spoke to Mary Magdalene. He said, go to my brothers and sisters and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and to your Father, to my God and to your God. He made us one. He arose from the tomb in wondrous power and glory, the deity and humanity combined. He took in his grasp the world, and by his wonderful work in giving his life, he restored the whole race of men to favor with God. No, he does not force it on us. We can choose, but he has given us the opportunity to be in favor with God. In every other religion, the human brings a sacrifice to God. Coconuts, rice, incense, sweet, zakat, salat, lambs, bulls, good behavior, good works, tithes, offerings. Christianity is the only religion where the whole picture is reversed. Here it is God who brings his sacrifice to humans and asks if we might accept it, saying it was very costly. Do you think you might find it in your heart to accept my sacrifice for you? What is your response? Here's mine. Looking at all that we have done so far, if this God was careful to preserve sufficient evidence to address my cold, questioning intellect, and if he left enough warmth and passion in his portrayal, like we saw today, to grip my wandering emotions, then my response is from deep within, a place called my heart that now feels safe enough to hang its eternal destiny on this man, whose story unfolds and is laid open in this book. I've made a stand, a decision. Think again, carefully, prayerfully, and make your own decision about this man and this book. And my prayer to you and for you is that God will bless you as you make your decision. We may meet, and it'll be good if we do. But if we don't, let's make a decision to meet up there, where he said he is going to prepare a place. It is called heaven. Shall we meet there? I bid you adieu with these words.